I think it's braver what you're doing now, coming and sitting in this chair, than trekking 770 kilometers to the North Pole.
For me, that's what ADHD is really all about. It's about spousal relationships. I don't think it's fine to constantly let people down. I don't think there are many people in my generation who are talking about it. If you are fairly deeply ADHD, as you get older and go into relationships with other adults, there is a significant risk you become the son, wife or partner becomes the mother.
How is it being around you?
I drive them mad.
We've had such a great response to the podcast, and so many of you have been in touch asking what you can do to help. It's really simple. Just follow, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. That way we can reach more people, and that way we can celebrate these great minds that think differently. Our next guest is one of the world's most accomplished Arctic explorers. In 2003, Pen Hadow made history as the first person to trek solo and unsupported from Canada to the North Pole. As the founder of ocean conservation charity 90 North, Pen has used his ADHD to think of innovative ways to tackle global warming. It was eye-opening to disentangle how mental health and neurological conditions can overlap, from ADHD to cyclothymia, chronic fatigue syndrome, and depression. This episode's got it all. Let's get into it. Let's see how great minds think differently. How did your ADHD assessment diagnosis come about?
I can summarize the preconditions, if you will, that I have experienced. Frustration and depression and exhaustion. Those are the three things, the unholy trinity that has been what I have wrestled with. And frustration because I know I can do things that certainly are, to me, interesting and pretty ambitious, or very ambitious. I know I can do them, and yet I can't. I really struggle with the processes, let's call it the administrative processes that are necessary to deliver these.
And the order.
It's seriously active and hard to switch off, and lots of things conflating at the same time and competing for one's attention. And the traffic light system, as I would see it, at the crossroads is really not functioning. I can get overtired quite easily. But ADHD will have played a role in these exhaustive states, which I've had several times in my life. So I have endeavored to learn and have been pretty good at not sort of being too manic and then having a collapse, which then sets me back months.
Tell me about this cyclothymia. I only have a limited understanding that there's aspects of it that it is highs and lows, emotional regulation, burnout, those sorts of traits.
I have no medical knowledge of bipolar disorder, but
yes,
major highs, manic highs, and then very, very serious lows. And cyclothymia is like an ameliorated, modified version of that. You get periods of relative highs, shall we say, and periods of relative lows. It seems to me that I have, very long periods of degrees of depression, from, technical clinical depression through to sort of milder depression. And I have short spurts of highs, which may last a day or they may last a couple of weeks. And then the exhaustion, it's not so much because I'm working so hard and getting myself into an exhausted state. It's more just the wearing down. I feel I have quite a low spare capacity on a day-by-day, week-by-week basis.
So when were you diagnosed ADHD, Pen?
I was about 55 years old.
Okay. Tell me about that moment of going, I think I might be, let me explore it.
5 years ago, my wife said, sorry, not 5 years ago, when I was 55, so whatever that was, 8 years ago or something, I think she sort of sat up in bed one morning and said, I don't think you're entirely right. I don't feel weird. I feel frustrated about certain things I don't seem to do, but a whole range of incompetencies. But I didn't feel I need to see a doctor about it. And she said, well, I think probably it might be helpful. Right. Could you tell me what it is I'm telling the doctor?
I'm just not quite right.
Yes. So I got this list.
Okay.
I felt like I said, well, why don't you come along? Because obviously you know far more about this than I do. You've got the third party perspective. Anyway, I had this list. And he said, right, I'm now sending you to a clinical psychiatrist who was, I believe, a leading light in this country of adult ADHD.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just, it was kind of before, it was right at the start of that adult ADHD and general ADHD
You could only
awareness.
diagnose it since 2008 in
Right,
adults.
in adults. Okay, well, I was
The
there.
belief was you got to your 16th birthday.
And then it all magically disappeared.
Ta-da. Fairy
Wouldn't that
godmother
have been
tips
good?
up and hey presto. So yeah, you would have been not far off the beginning of that.
Yeah.
Hey, adults can be ADHD too, do you know?
He said, Pen, you're a 7 out of 10, basically. I did all sorts of tests with him. And I came out of that room, and I remember that afternoon thinking, I'm really upset. I mean, really upset. And frustrated as hell that I've got to the age of 55 or so, no one has told me that there might be an explanation of why I basically behave in certain ways, and that it is different, and there's a whole syndrome, or there's a whole sequence of set of stuff that means you have got this particular way of thinking. And I must tell you, he said two things to me in particular that have stuck with me. He said to me, Pen, I suspect you're one of those people that can't really see the wood from the trees. Now, that is a trigger phrase for me, because I've always thought in my own mind that I'm pretty bright. And I always thought that if you can't see the wood from the trees, someone's basically saying you're thick. He said, no, that's not what I mean. It's like, you can see all the trees, you just don't know which is the important one now in terms of priority. Yep. He said, if I set light to a tree, you'd be fine. You'd know, right, that's the project I have to do, and I have to do it now.
Yes.
You need to be given that clarification by external forces, if you like, or need to arrive at it somehow yourself. So that sort of forgave me for sort of doing the wrong things at the wrong time, kind of a lot of the time. And from the mini micros that I know many of your guests have discussed, well, I find out the bigger stuff it gets, the less that's a problem. It's the small detail stuff of daily life and the sort of middle level stuff. Bins.
What about the bins?
I hate the bins.
Okay.
I actually hate them because they are the bane of my life, because I'll just forget.
Okay.
I really don't want to let her down. It's like,
sure.
Oh God, she's told me. So now I'm being teed up for failure. She might tell me in the morning, get up, don't forget it's the bins. And then she might even tell me while we're having coffee at the breakfast table.
What if the green bin was in the kitchen, in your eye line? Are you an out of sight, out of mind?
Yes, I am. I would say out of sight,
Object
out of mind.
Permanence, I think, is
She's not going to go.
Term.
Okay, outside permanent.
Object permanence. Listening to you talk, it's less about whether it's the bins or the keys or whatever, the household chore, whatever it is, and more just about the impact of what you then tell yourself. But I'm also really struck by, we're laughing about the bins, but you're a man. You've trekked on your own in the most hostile kind of conditions, taking ginormous risks in terms of, navigation and polar bears and ice and all the rest of it. And yet you can't remember to take the bins out.
But I will pull you up on a few things, if I may.
Please.
So you talk about gigantic risks.
Mm-hmm.
They're tiny. No, really. They're tiny. I didn't just go out there and do it. I've been doing it for 15 years, every year, spending up to 3 months, actually up to 6 months in the polar environment. You're unconsciously incompetent, and then you become consciously incompetent, then you become consciously competent. Then you push it into the sort of new frontier zone of, oh, no, I need to be, right, I need to start thinking about this. Okay, I'm going to take it to the next level, but it requires, new thinking to succeed. So I wasn't just doing something massive from a standing start.
Yes.
It was an incremental process. I would say one of the most powerful things that I could share with anybody is that almost anything that you want to achieve, becoming a better, more effective leader, being better at your computer software programming, whatever it is, it's a process.
Are you a big risk taker?
Yes. But my point is, the big risks that I took, and I don't like to admit this, are with my family and what it took. It was the preparation. It took me 15 years of increasingly, to use colloquial language, obsessive, focused effort and cutting away more and more things to be able to get all those skill sets that I needed to be able to do this feat.
Yeah. And this was third time lucky, wasn't it?
Third time lucky. So I failed, if you like, in 94. I failed in 98. I succeeded in 2003.
What happened on those first two?
Yes, at one level I failed. But actually, if you keep going at the project, they are temporary setbacks.
Yes.
They're not failures.
Yes.
And then when you realize they're not actually the value, there's no value in a temporary setback in itself. The value is in realizing that something happened. You got yourself in a situation you could no longer deal with. So that is, you are being offered the key to the door. If you can work out what the key is to open that door, you then go to the next level. Next time you're out on the ice and you come into that situation, you'll know what to do. So they are learning opportunities. But really, they really are.
Yep.
But I want to say is that the risks, the big risks, were the impacts on my family as I focused on this, and the impacts on my, let's call it, financial situation. I was going to do this pretty much whatever it cost. And I would burn whatever I need to burn to get this thing done. And I remember being told, you've got to have a plan B, Pen. You've got to have a plan B because you know what you're like when you fail, in inverted commas. You're in a really bad state for weeks, if not months. It's really upsetting for everybody around you, never mind just you. Must have a plan B. So if you fail again, and I sort of looked in the eye and I said, look, if I have a plan B, I don't think I can do this. I need to have burnt all my bridges. It needs to be absolute focus. I have got to do this. No excuses. There's no soft landings here because it's that hard to do.
Yeah.
It's that hard. No one else has ever done it.
No.
And there's a good reason. It's effing hard.
Yeah.
And not in the way people think. Again, it's not the physiologies so much and the physicalities of, most people can, if they really want to, can get fit and strong. It's actually understanding that it's an intellectual, I would say it's almost an intellectual challenge, really. It's about what goes on in your head. Yes. Which is the psychology and how to... I had very particular strategies for the 5 scenarios I knew I would face when I was doing, out on that solo thing. I knew what they would be that would really get me down. And they get down really fast and you just reach for your phone. You just can't take it anymore.
What were those 5?
One of them was, to give you an example, you come up over a big ridge of ice, big Celtic tumbles of ice, where the ice floes have been crunched together and they throw up these big ridges, which you've got to drag your impossibly heavy sledge over. You can hardly move it on the flat.
117 kilos.
Yeah.
So that's huge.
It's a lot. And at minus 40, the snow is much more grippy. The frictional effect is much more grabby and higher on the sledge runners than at minus 5 snow. When the sledge is at its heaviest and the weather is at its coldest at the start of the expedition, and you've got most of the ridges are in the first 150 miles. Okay. As they hit the coast, it just crumples up against the coast. So you're doing all up and down, up and down. That's what breaks it just breaks them mentally. That's why 95% of expeditions don't succeed, even with teams being resupplied with light sledges. So you come up over a ridge and you think 12 foot above sea level, you can see about 2 kilometres. And sometimes all you can see is rubble. There's no flat bits at all. And you think, right, well, I'm going to be in here. I'm going to work as hard as a man can work for 12 hours, and I'm going to do about a half a mile. And if it goes on much like this, and every year it's different, well, there will be no possibility of reaching the pole. Yes. But you never know until you've gone there. It's not like Everest, where you every footstep, you know exactly what's happening. Yes. I mean, you can plan it completely. You absolutely can't here. So it breaks people, and you might do that for 2 or 3 days, and then you're so far off schedule, you just think, it's not working for me. So solution, I have this particular psychological tool that I'd pull out, and it was, imagine a rock band doing really loud, crazy music behind a glass screen in a music recording studio, and there's a really cool dude in his chair sliding the odd button, smoking a cheroot, and he's got his headphones on. The band thinks that he's listening to them, okay? He's actually listening to a bit of Bach or something really mellow. And the point of that sort of 2-second image in my mind, held in my mind, is you can buy into the rock band or you can buy into what you want to go on in your own head. The next thing is, it's not a punishment that I'm up on the ice. Sure. In fact, the opposite. It's a privilege. I've used all my social contacts and confidence and networks and blah, blah, blah. I'm in this unique situation of being able to be the first person to have done this thing. And you desperately want to do it. It's a privilege. And then the last step in this little sequence is, well, actually, not only is it a privilege, this hard bit that I'm now presented with, if there weren't hard bits like this, you'd all be doing it. This is it. This pen is it.
Yeah.
And there's not a bear, there aren't 12 bears running at the same time. It's just more ice. Get over yourself, having tools to keep emotional stability. You think, well, I was feeling rage, anger, frustration, despair, sadness, happiness, all sorts of the full spectrum. You think, but you're on your own. How can you possibly be feeling all these things? But you do. These feelings are all real and they are understandable. But are they helpful?
Yeah.
Right. No, I recognize it. I accept it. I'm now filing that, and I'm going to deliberately switch to thoughts that are positive and helpful in this moment, just to get me through this moment.
How do you think ADHD helped you in those situations? Reflecting back.
Okay. Let me come back, if I may,
please,
to the clinical psychiatrist. He said, first of all, he told me about those trees and then the burn tree. He said, right, you're bad at deadlines, Pen. Yeah, he's right. Right. If the trees are light, you know which one to go for and you'll do it. You are an ultimate expression of self-medicating is quite the right word, but you went to the most blank environment imaginable. You went on your own and you had 1 point to reach. You seriously stripped back, cut all the trees down.
Yes.
And it's like, you couldn't make you up. I mean, you do need to know, Pen, that's why you did it. And it's how you could do it as well. Because I can hyper-focus like lots of us can. We were talking earlier about the cocktail of influences. There's so many, but those days I didn't realize that I was, if you like, self-medicating and creating projects that would actually suit my mindset.
We've had experts and other guests on before. I think of people like Cary Grant talking about finding environments in which we thrive in, and that happening either consciously or not consciously, but we seem to be able to adapt or find or gravitate towards these areas, where we can sort of do our best work.
It's a search for approval and self-respect. Self-respect for oneself. Put me in a corporate environment, I die.
Yes.
Pretty much there and then. I've tried it.
Yeah.
It was horrible. Not because the people were horrible, but the systems, the processes, the behaviors, and you arrive back, knackered at the end of a long working day, and you might just have some energy by Saturday lunchtime to actually do something that you might enjoy yourself. I react quite strongly against that.
What did your family, colleagues, when you were diagnosed, how did you approach that?
I have to be honest and say that I excused myself by saying, look, I've been like this for so long. I've done what I've done. I'm rubbing along okay. It's not easy, but I mask as best I can. I was really frustrated. How could I be this old? And I've been to the best schools. I mean, it's kind of allegedly the best schools, and university. I have not fully grasped the opportunities, knowing that ADHD now presents, what do you call it, CBT. Things like that I have been told, would be useful.
Sure.
I know it's not right. I kind of feel it's not right to say, well, I'm afraid I've got ADHD. I'm not really good at that sort of stuff. I can't. You tell me 3 things to go and practice over the next week till I next see you or the next session. And I just don't do them.
Yeah.
I just don't.
Yeah.
So it's kind of pointless. And
because that doesn't work for you.
No.
Right?
No, I need people with me. I just can't face looking at my emails. I get I'm sure you do, so many a day on so many different subjects. And I like to do things properly. Right, I'm giving someone a response. I'm going to give them a proper response.
Yes.
That individual deserves to know what they're asking me.
Yes.
And then I end up going on a holiday once a year somewhere, if I'm lucky, for a week. And my computer comes with me everywhere. And they know what's going to happen, and I know what's going to happen. And they say, don't you dare bring it. And I see you brought it. And don't you dare think you're going to be doing any of that. And I spend a full half day, every day of the holidays, catching up and literally like Space Invaders, trying to get down the purple and the red flagged emails down to, near as, I think I've never done better than 20. Still got 20 left. And I feel so good when I've done that.
Yes.
It's like way better than a holiday could ever achieve.
Yes.
So it's work in progress. And that's an optimistic way of putting how I'm going to improve things for myself, but also for those around me.
How is it being around you? What do you think people would say?
I drive them mad. And I guess with frustration, with disappointment, with, seriously, it's corrosive for them. It's corrosive for me because I know when I'm failing, of course, and I don't do it deliberately. In fact, I definitely don't want to fail in lots of these things. Of course, for the most basic things, bins, to upwards, but it just keeps happening. It just kind of is how it is. I feel terrible about it, and I sort of try to find ways of sort of making up for it. But I mean, if I'm driving people mad, I'm driving myself mad with frustration. It's really hard. I don't honestly feel that I'm on the journey to addressing the issues that my ADHD causes.
What tells you that you're not on that journey?
I know why I'm not good at some things, and I have tried,
But is it
to address
okay?
things.
Is it okay to be not good at things?
I don't think it is fine. Okay, so I don't think it's fine to constantly let people down. It's not fine for either party. So I've borrowed someone else's keys. I said, well, so where are the keys? I said, well, they're probably in the bowl, and they're not. And then I have a panic. I think, okay, what jacket was I wearing? And then it turns out I've left them on the shelf outside the house next to the car because I actually was trying to get the dog out, and I just. But it might take me 2 hours and a lot of stress to find them.
And have you always been like that, Pen?
I don't think so. I mean, I was not a naughty boy at school.
Sure.
I was the golden.
You were the golden boy.
I was the golden boy. I really nailed it at my sort of primary school and at my secondary school. But stuff hit the fan when I went to university. When suddenly you leave home and you do your first job, or you go to university or to college or what have you, suddenly it's like, there's an awful lot of stuff, and you can just sort of have an overload and just start to not function very well. And I did that. Two things came out for me. I mean, they're not particular, but I really only learnt two valuable things at university. And I'm a resource investigator, and I like finding things out. I'm pretty good, I reckon, at pattern recognitions in concepts and so on, and stringing things together to make a new way of looking at a problem and or solving a problem.
These are things that the non-ADHDers don't do, Pen, and can't do. It's easy, isn't it, to talk about the challenges, because I think that's a place that we're more comfortable in sometimes, of kind of like, oh, I'm not very good at that, rather than like, let me first tell you what I am really good at, and then I'll tell you some of my challenges. And actually, your energy has just totally changed when you're kind of like, no, actually, do you know what? Okay, I might forget the bins sometimes, but actually I'm really good at this, I'm really good at this, and my brain works in this way. So in the kinds of projects that you do, your brain is an absolute asset, and it comes with a set of skills that's absolutely perfect for, as you say, being this resource investigator role of like, I'm going to go and figure it out. I'm going to go and find it, and I might come at it from a different angle. Yeah. How much do you think the climate and planet Earth needs that different way of thinking?
I don't think humans are going to be around in 10 million years, right? They probably won't be around in a million years in anything way that we see them now. And it's really just a matter of how long are we going to keep going like this? And there are a number of things that are going to be our undoing. I think that we are doomed to be led as part of the human condition in large part by sociopaths. And they tend not to be the people who are interested in, let's say, the wider benefit of the global community. They're wired up. You're driven by very personal ideas and benefits. I seriously, vacillate between moments of optimism and periods of, it's just not happening, and it's not happening at the scale that's needed. It's just not. I've given up the idea that people will sort of self-regulate and just simply not start using as much stuff in any meaningful sense. So that leaves you with the only other dynamic, which is right then it's the number of people. Managing populations at a regional, national, international scale is highly problematic for all the reasons that some people will imagine of, well, okay, so how do you manage a population down? Who's not going to be able to have as many children or any children? How does that even happen?
So what do we do?
I think it will be very interesting to find out how having more women in very senior roles in a few generations' time, I just feel that there is a genetic predisposition potentially to women just being more caring and having a bigger, wider view of the community, family, of community, of relationships with nature. I organised the first all-women expedition to the North Pole in 1997. I didn't lead it, but there were 20 women and two women guides, professional guides, leading those teams to achieve that. One of them was a Royal Protection Squad officer. One of them played international hockey. One of them was a surgeon, and one of them was just the most remarkable young woman, mother of triplets, who were aged about 3 at the time, and she was, basically she was a single mother. Hell of a lady. Many men, and notably in the journalistic community, who were kind of, really, if women can do this, it wasn't that difficult in the first place. Not cool, Pen, not cool. Why are you encouraging women? That's the subtext.
Yeah.
It's like, keep it for the men, because once they can do it, then it's like, anybody can do it. Blokes, if I said, look, I'll give you a hand, or you start to reach forward to help your sledge, and you'd say, air would turn blue. It's my project. I can do this. Thank you, Pen.
Yes.
That's why I'm kind of here. I'm that sort of a guy. I'm a North Pole sort of a guy. It's like, okay. And they'd be yanking and, shoving thing down the far side. Go down the other side and breaking stuff. And it's just
I'll do it.
Yeah, I've got this. Get off. And the women, they wouldn't even talk to each other. They just flowed over these ridges. They'd be unhitching, moving stuff up, pushing it up.
Team.
Now, if I was going to bet on women or woman and a men versus man doing these really tough, I can only talk really specifically on the Arctic Ocean. I was thinking there's a high percentage of women will be successful. And that project really sent ripples out through the adventure community.
Yeah, I love that. I'd like to talk about your generation, if I can say that, Pen, and views around neurodiversity, ADHD, autism, dyslexia, all the rest of it. I feel like you're quite an anomaly and quite a rarity in your generation, being able to talk about this kind of stuff. Does that chime with you?
Yes, in general, generally, yes. I don't think there are many people of my generation who are talking about it, partly because they haven't been diagnosed, partly because it's not cool to be self-revelatory to a public audience about how things really are. I was really anxious. I have been anxious. I talked to my children. I said, look, I want to do this for other people. It's okay, and it's not absolutely limiting. And the most important thing is, if you can have that diagnosis, then you've got the awareness of what all the things are that ADHD may be driving within you. And that is the critical first step. It then gives you the choice and a degree of control over, right, what am I going to do about it? And you can muddle along as is, or you can pick on certain things, or you can pick on a few things and keep building on that. So by, over a few years, you've actually sort of got solutions, in inverted commas, coping mechanisms to make your life feel better, and make you feel better about your life, and those around you feel better about you and their lives because they're with you.
I'm really glad that you have come on to talk about this, Pen, because my parents are in their 60s, and my dad, he's sat in the green chair, not because he's been interviewed, but he's visited here. He'll talk about it. It's okay. He's quite open-minded in that sense. My mother, not a word. Don't even know if she's listened to the podcast. Nothing. Absolutely crickets. ADHD, it doesn't matter how old you are. It doesn't matter what generation you're from. It doesn't matter really where you come from. This is there. It's happening. Just because previous generations, older generations, maybe aren't as aware or as educated, or you don't talk about that kind of stuff, it doesn't mean it's not there.
Yeah. in denial and just sort of burying it. It's just not changing anything.
Yeah.
They can't change anything, and therefore things can't be made any better.
What would you say, Pen, to people listening who, because I guess there's what's the point in getting assessed? I've done it this way for all these years, and, what's the point?
Okay, I'd say there are 2 points. One is it sets you on a pathway which you can choose to go down or not, that provides processes that you can put yourself through that can make you feel better about yourself and about how productive you are and whatever it is you want to be productive about, and about how people feel about you and your relationships. The other thing, and in a way, I think it's the most important thing that I'd like to share, which I find quite uncomfortable to do. If you are fairly deeply ADHD, as you get older and go into relationships with other adults, there is a significant risk that your partner will find themselves in an administrative, supportive, covering up, picking up the pieces role, and you will find yourself being looked after. Now, an extreme sort of psychologist sort of way of phrasing this, which I really don't like, is that you end up, whoever you are, you can be the most amazing, however you want to put it, person, but you become the son and your wife or partner becomes the mother. And that is a really, really difficult relationship to live with for both sides, because the ADHD person is just feeling more and more useless and dragging things down and making life difficult and just flipping incompetent. And the wife, if you like, in this scenario, is just feeling like, I'm having to tell you, he can't think for it. He can't do anything. He can't organize a holiday. He can't organize a taxi. He can't remember my birthday. He can't, is he in on this or not? And so you get this mother-son thing, which is just a disaster. It's a disaster for partners, married or unmarried. That's a very strong way of putting it, and slightly sort of feels to me probably slightly Freudian as that sort of assessment. But it's like one becomes a very supportive, it's doing the heavy lifting.
It's being a caregiver.
Yeah.
In that sense.
I mean, it's heading for a carer.
Yeah.
Frankly.
Yeah.
From the age of 30, you find yourself as a carer. And that's not what most partners want to find. That's not the situation they want to be in, not what they expect.
No.
And then it's a real shock. And then it's, oh my God, this is how it is.
Yeah.
This is it. And he's like, I didn't know he had ADHD, or I didn't know she had ADHD. This is a really important thing to sort of grasp and to say, well, actually, if I can get a diagnosis and maybe I can have medication that will help. It does help some people a lot, some people a bit, and some people not at all. But and then do the CBTs or whatever else is suggested.
Yeah.
For me, that's what ADHD is really all about. It's about spousal relationships and the real unfairness and challenges and frustrations that it causes.
And obviously part of the sort of intervention or the way that doesn't become an outcome are things like diagnosis and understanding, because these unhealthy dynamics then, they play out.
Yeah.
And significantly. And that's without even talking about consequences and impact on children and other family members. Just listening to you talk, Pen, has kind of gone, actually, a lot of people are like, I don't want a label, or what's the point in getting diagnosed? And there is an aspect that it's not just about you getting diagnosed.
No.
We're part of lots of these units, and whether that's work or family or friends, teams, it's not just us.
No, it's really not. If it's in work where perhaps your partner doesn't even see it,
Sure.
The few things that you are really flying at, really nailing, really proud of yourself about, if you don't get the feedback, great job, loving what you're doing, we need more people like you, whatever, pretty much ongoing, because one's, let's say, rest of life is so corrosive on your self-esteem, and you find that, well, I'll go and hide in work because that's the only that's a safe space, if you like.
Yeah.
And I know I'm okay here. And, I've kept myself, I just couldn't function in bigger organizations. It is a coping mechanism.
But it's also an environment where you thrive, right? So
yeah, I've got a very odd sort of, I don't know if you call it a paradox, but I love being with people. I really love it. I come alive. I get super energized by engagement with people. So I should be in a big business, really strutting and seeing lots of people all the time. But but then I need to be on my own because I can't cope. I just can't sustain all the opportunities that I've stimulated and created.
Yeah.
I then can't sustain it because I don't have the resources to do it. So I sort of have this weird
but you can only sustain it by having time out of it. I think that's a nuance in language change, but it's kind of, well, I go out and I expand everything, and then I do need to process that because it can't stay like that the whole time.
That's so what happens, isn't it?
I talk about taking things for a walk in my brain.
Yeah.
If like, I need to take that for a walk. Yeah, let it kind of fester and let it marinate.
And settle, and it sort of settles down into its layers. It's like, okay, that's actually the bit
let it clear.
Yeah,
I think that's really important. Otherwise, brains like ours, you can't be switched on the whole time. How do you? So much of your work obviously is about such a big thing.
Well, it is now. I mean, now it's really big, trying to create an international treaty.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's quite big.
It's big concepts that take time, focus and commitment that you clearly know how to do, and an obsessive drive you clearly know how to do. But it is a sequence and a series of steps. And how have you learned to break that down?
So there's myself and my small team around me who are super bright, super committed. And one of my greatest pleasures in life is having conversations with them, Zoom, on the phone, in meetings. I find that seriously nourishing. Here are people who really know the world that I'm interested in, and I can download a whole bunch of ideas. I know what needs to be done. I kind of know the big process now. I can see the big steps that need to be achieved by us in collaboration. No one achieved anything on their own. That solo thing, I wasn't on my own. There was, years of people investing, all sorts of equipment development, all sorts of things. At the end of the day, it comes down for us to, again, generate insights that are relevant, that people have not considered before.
About the Arctic.
About the Arctic Ocean. The issues that biodiversity faces, and specifically the high seas region that surrounds the North Pole. It's about informing the relevant people and inspiring them. We are there to catalyze action. We are agents of change.
What's the goal?
The goal is to create a North Pole Marine Reserve. Be the largest wildlife reserve, if you like, certainly in marine terms, in the world by a stretch.
So we've got people's homes burning, and we've got all our day-to-day challenges on our doorstep, and we've got to save the bees, and we've got to plant trees, and we've got all this stuff happening in our backyard. Why should listeners and watchers, why do we need to care about the Arctic?
So the Arctic, many definitions of it. Most people would probably accept that north of the Arctic Circle, okay? But actually, that's an enormous amount of land area as well as ocean area. We are focused just on the marine life right up at the top of the planet. It is a high seas area, which means it's an international space. In international legal terms, it is for the common benefit of humankind. It is every nation and every citizen of every nation has equal rights, benefits, opportunities, liabilities to these areas. Actually, 50% of the Earth's surface is accounted for by high seas. It's an enormous area. There's now a United Nations treaty, the High Seas Treaty, which is coming to fruition, which for the first time will enable legally enforceable protections of some of these particularly delicate areas within that 50% of high seas. Basically, high seas beyond national jurisdiction. It's like common areas in the deep ocean, if you like. Outer space is an international space. There's an outer space treaty, literally.
Okay.
Antarctica, it's an international space. There's the Antarctic Treaty System. It's a science-only area.
We don't have anything for the Arctic.
There's the atmosphere, which was the Paris Agreement. The atmosphere of our planet is an international space because you need to breathe air just as someone in Nigeria, as someone in Vietnam. It's a circulating thing. There are two others. The high seas areas is an international space, and the seabed, which is seen as a separate thing, and subseabed underneath these high seas areas.
Okay.
And our view is, look, the sea ice has been a natural barrier to access for vessels throughout human history.
Yes.
Less than 10 vessels have ever been in there, and they're all research vessels and one tourist vessel that goes in there. A tiny number of vessels. As that sea ice melts away, it will all have gone around the North Pole. All of a sudden, commercial fishing vessels can access this area around the North Pole. International shipping is a shorter route for vessels than going through the Panama Canal and Suez Canal. So you've got cargo vessels, basically. So we're just trying to say the ice is going, so that barrier that stopped you all doing, none of you have got in there yet. Let's never go in there.
Okay.
This is the least disturbed area outside of Antarctica, but it's the least disturbed ocean in the world. Let's not ever disturb just this one area. Let's agree, because international waters, if you like, high seas, science only, not going to be exploited for any other, for anything else. So it's not about getting people and organisations and businesses and sectors out. It's just never go in.
Yes.
And it's almost like a self-discipline thing. It's like, really? Are we just going to just, wherever there's anything, we're going to get it? It's like, no. If we can't put any limits on self-control on the global community, then we are it's just another indication of doom. The rate of loss of biodiversity and species and volumes of populations of species in these high seas areas is terrifying. 75 to 80% will have gone in the coming decades.
How long do you think it's going to take you to get this treaty signed?
15 years.
15 years.
2037.
That's when you want it done by, or that's when you think it will be done by?
That's when it will be done by.
That's when it will be done by.
Yes, Ben.
So this is another...
Because there's a big treaty that's in place just to stop the fishing, and that's when that finishes. So we want to build on that amazing diplomatic achievement where all, Russia, China, South Korea, Canada, America, EU, they've all signed up. We're not going to fish in there till 2037. And we're saying, because of the precautionary principle. And there's a good reason, guys. So let's just build that and just say, and no shipping's going to go through there.
Yes.
Go around the sides if it has to.
Yes.
And no mining.
And how long have you been working on this?
3 years.
Okay. So an 18-year project.
Yeah.
Well,
it took 15 years to do the solo.
Yes.
I'm only adding on an extra 3 years to do a treaty. So I think it's all doable.
I think it's absolutely fascinating what you've done, what you want to do. I think and you might wince at me saying this, but I think it's brave. I think it's braver what you're doing now, coming and sitting in this chair, than trekking 770 kilometers to the North Pole, actually. And I'm really grateful that you've come and given us your time and your brain, your voice, because this isn't just about, hey, let's get children, let's figure this out for the next generation. I think with people who, myself included, being diagnosed later in life, the awareness is really important and the understanding is really important. And I hope people listening who are, later in their careers and their lives kind of take great comfort from, I guess, me paraphrasing you massively by going, I'm glad I got a diagnosis, because I'd rather know than not know.
It gives you hope and opportunity to lead a more fulfilling life for yourself and those important and close to you.
Yeah.
Without it, you're going blind.
So I'd love to give you one of our green dot badges, give you another badge, and ask you who you'd like to give it to.
I would say the person that I would like to give this to is my wife, because I know how hard it is to live with me. And she's wants me to feel better about myself and knows that that will help us together as we go forward. So I would like to give this to really to thank her for being there for me. And it's really me saying to her, I will work. I have a responsibility to work on how I can make things better for me and therefore for us. It's really a thank you and a promise.